The stars were quiet that night, in the endless dark of space. No storm of radiation, no strange signal, just silence, broken only by the steady hum of the Galactic Empire's war fleet. Thousands of alien ships drifted in a flawless formation, their silver hulls glinting under the glow of distant suns. They were proud, disciplined, and confident. To them, this was another display of power, another show of the Empire's strength across the galaxy. From the high command bridge of the Empire's flagship, the admirals spoke in calm voices. Their long robes shimmered with badges of conquest, trophies from battles they had won in countless star systems. To them, today would be no different. Their scanners had detected a lone human ship approaching their sector. The humans, as always, were late to understand how small they were in this universe. "Send out the announcement," one of the admirals said. His voice was dry, certain. "Let them know they are already dead." The crew obeyed without hesitation. No one on that ship doubted the outcome. After all, the Empire had broken countless fleets before. To crush humanity's little warship would be nothing more than routine. The officers smiled, amused at the thought. How foolish, they believed, for humans to enter the battlefield with only one ship. But out there, in the deep black void, a shadow grew larger. At first, it looked like a drifting mountain, a trick of the senses, a false reading. But as it drew closer, the officers realized it was no error. The vessel was massive. It stretched like a continent, its armor plates darker than night, with edges sharp like the blade of a sword. The design was strange, alien even, yet its purpose was clear. This was not a cargo ship. It was not a transport. It was built for war. The admiral's smile faded. "Impossible," he whispered under his breath. The ship was a dreadnought, a human dreadnought. On the bridge of the alien flagship, tension grew. The crew whispered among themselves, their voices uneasy. Humanity had never shown such power. They were known as a young species, stubborn but weak, never daring to challenge the great empires directly. But now, here it was. A warship unlike anything the galaxy had seen from them before. The dreadnought's surface began to glow with lines of blue light, pulsing like veins of energy across its armored hull. The engines burned with a fierce orange glow, so bright they looked like twin suns. The ship moved with slow, deliberate grace, as if it knew it did not need to hurry. It was not prey. It was the hunter. The Empire's admirals tried to laugh, but their voices cracked. "It is only one ship," they reminded themselves. "We have thousands," yet the words felt hollow, thin against the dread that grew in their hearts. Out in space, the smaller alien ships adjusted their positions, surrounding the human vessel in tight formations. Fighters circled like vultures, their weapons already hot, ready to fire. Still, the dreadnought did not change course. The silence was crushing. The alien commanders expected fear, retreat, or at least hesitation. But the human ship kept moving forward, steady and calm, as though the entire Empire's fleet was nothing more than dust before it. "Why do they not stop?" one officer asked nervously. No one answered. The dreadnought's lights grew brighter. Across its hull, massive cannons rotated into place, humming with power. Strange ports opened, revealing weapons no alien had ever seen before. The design was unfamiliar, yet terrifyingly purposeful. This was not just a ship of war. It was a message. The admirals could feel it. They were not watching a simple human invention. They were watching the will of an entire species carved into steel. Then for the first time, a voice echoed through the void. The human captain's transmission cut across every alien frequency, strong and calm. "This is humanity's answer." Only those 4 words. Nothing more. A chill ran through every alien soldier. On the flagship, silence gripped the bridge. Some clenched their fists, others swallowed hard, but none could hide their fear. The admiral tried to regain control. "Fire upon it!" he ordered. Yet even as the order left his lips, doubt gnawed at his mind. Would their weapons even matter? The first wave of alien firepower streaked across the stars. Blazing plasma torpedoes, lances of light, a storm of destruction aimed at the lone ship. For a moment, the dark space lit up brighter than a sunrise. Explosions wrapped the dreadnought, fire covering its hull. The aliens cheered, believing the fight was already over. But as the smoke cleared, the truth returned like a knife. The Dreadnought was still there. Its shields shimmered faintly, glowing like a living barrier. The attacks had done nothing but scratch its surface. The ship kept advancing, slow and unstoppable, like a mountain drifting forward no matter the storm. The cheers on the alien ships died in their throats. The Dreadnought's engines roared. Its cannons finished charging. Blue light ran across its hull in bright rivers, collecting into the mouths of its weapons. The ship seemed to breathe, alive with energy waiting to strike. The admirals watched in frozen silence. Their perfect formation, their flawless confidence, their 1,000 warships, all of it suddenly seemed small. The Dreadnought aimed. The galaxy held its breath. For years, the galaxy had laughed at humanity. The older races called them reckless, short-lived, too fragile to matter. Humans were seen as wanderers of small planets, builders of tiny ships, dreamers who reached for stars they could never hold. In the halls of the Empire, humans were a joke, a species to mock at banquets and use as pawns in trade wars. But what the galaxy never understood was how humans behaved when cornered. On Earth, far from the glittering eyes of the Empire, plans had been drawn in secret. Generations of engineers, soldiers, and leaders whispered of one idea. If the galaxy wanted to treat humanity as prey, then humanity would become the hunter. Out of those whispers, the project began. It did not happen overnight. Factories hidden in asteroid belts worked in silence. Scientists gave up their lives, pouring every discovery into a single vision. Every failure was studied, every mistake turned into progress. The project consumed decades, eating resources, costing blood. But humans did not stop. They could not stop. The Dreadnought was their answer. Unlike other ships, it was not built to chase glory. It was not meant for parades or to frighten weak colonies. This vessel was designed for survival, for war, for the moment when humanity would stand alone against empires that had ruled for thousands of years. Its armor was not plates welded together, but whole mountains of metal forged in gravity wells that crushed and shaped them until they became harder than anything known in the galaxy. Its core was a reactor so powerful that it burned brighter than suns, hidden under layers of shielding so thick that even the bravest scientists feared standing near it. Its weapons were monsters in their own right. Cannons that could vaporize fleets, missile silos the size of cities, and railguns that hurled steel faster than light could reach an eye. But the most terrifying thing was not the ship's size, nor its guns, nor its reactor. It was its purpose. Humanity had built the Dreadnought with one thought in mind. Never again would they be helpless. The Empire's admirals on that distant battlefield could not know the story. To them, it was only one ship. But to humans, it was more than a machine. It was a declaration carved in steel. Every rivet was a promise. Every weapon was a reminder. Humanity would never kneel. Inside the Dreadnought, the crew worked in silence. Their uniforms were plain, their voices steady, but their eyes carried fire. Each of them knew why they were here. They had families back on Earth, children growing under the shadow of empires that laughed at them. They carried memories of humiliation, of treaties signed with shame, of soldiers who had died defending colonies no one else cared about. Now, they were part of something bigger. On the command bridge, the captain stood at the center, watching the alien fleet form its wall of fire. His face was calm. He was not young nor old, but his eyes were sharp as blades. He had seen war before, but nothing like this. Still, there was no doubt in his voice. "They think we are weak," he said softly. The officers around him nodded. "They think we are small," he continued. His hand rested on the arm of his command chair, fingers steady. "They think one ship cannot stand against 1,000. They are wrong." The crew did not cheer. They did not shout. They simply worked, their hands moving across consoles, their hearts beating with the same rhythm as the great ship itself. Outside, the alien fleet spread wider, their ships adjusting, their weapons charging. They did not yet understand what was coming. They thought the humans were desperate, that this Dreadnought was a final gamble, a foolish last stand. But the Dreadnought had not been built to gamble. It had been built to win. As the ship advanced, its systems lit up one by one. Shield layers unfolded like invisible wings, humming with energy. Weapons armed in silence, waiting only for the command. Deep inside the hull, the great reactor roared, flooding the ship with unstoppable power. For a moment, even the void itself seemed to bend around it, as though space itself feared the ship's presence. Back on Earth, no one knew what was happening yet. Families carried on with their lives, never aware that history was being written light years away. But when news would spread, when whispers of the battle would reach the colonies, they would understand. Humanity had not only survived, humanity had risen. The Empire could not see it yet, but this single dreadnought was more than a warship. It was the opening chapter of a new story, one the galaxy had never expected to read. The captain looked at the fleet before him, his voice quiet but carrying across every deck of the ship. "Remember this day," he said. "This is the day humanity stopped being prey." And the dreadnought moved forward, its lights burning brighter, its weapons waiting like clenched fists. The alien fleet stood ready, still convinced of their strength. But the truth was already written in the silence of the stars. The storm had only begun. The silence of space shattered as the alien fleet opened fire. From every corner of the Empire's formation, plasma bolts, missile storms, and beams of burning light tore across the void. Thousands of shots lit the darkness like a second sunrise. For a moment, the galaxy itself seemed to tremble under the roar of the Empire's firepower. The dreadnought did not move. The human ship floated calmly, its massive body glowing with faint blue lines of energy. Wave after wave of enemy fire slammed against its shields, but the barriers held firm. Energy rippled across its surface like water disturbed by stones, and then it settled again, calm, unbroken. On the bridge of the alien flagship, the admirals leaned forward. They expected to see the human vessel torn apart, breaking under the storm. Instead, they watched in horror as the dreadnought endured it all without flinching. "This is impossible," one of them whispered. In the dreadnought's control center, the human crew remained silent. Their faces were calm, their hands steady on controls. The captain watched the storm of fire outside, his eyes unblinking. "They are wasting their weapons," he said softly. "Now we answer." A single command echoed through the ship. The dreadnought came alive. Its cannons turned with smooth precision, each one larger than an alien cruiser. Blue energy flooded into them, pulsing like the heartbeat of a star. Railgun barrels glowed white-hot, missile bays slid open, and the deep thrum of power filled every corridor. Then it fired. One shot. Only one. A beam of energy brighter than a sun cut across the battlefield. It struck an alien battleship head-on. In less than a second, the massive vessel was gone, burned into fragments, reduced to glowing dust. The explosion lit the alien fleet in terrifying clarity, showing every officer, every soldier, every ship trembling in fear. Panic rippled through the Armada. Their formation wavered. Crews shouted into comms, commanders barked orders, but nothing calmed the rising terror. Then came the second shot. Another alien cruiser split in half, its body sheared open like paper under a blade. Escape pods burst from it, scattering like sparks, but most were consumed in the fire. The dreadnought kept advancing. Its engines roared, trails of orange flame pushing it forward like a titan walking through fire. With each strike, its cannons found another target. Entire wings of the Empire's fleet vanished, crushed in moments. The aliens tried to respond. Fighters rushed in swarms, diving at the human ship, firing everything they had. But the dreadnought's defenses woke. Small turrets spun rapidly, unleashing bursts of energy that shredded the fighters before they even touched its shields. Hundreds died in seconds. On the alien flagship, the admirals no longer laughed. Their faces were pale, their hands shaking. "This is not war," one said. "This is slaughter." The captain of the dreadnought gave no speech. He did not taunt. He did not shout. His orders were calm, each one measured, each strike perfectly timed. Target their core ships, cut the line at the center. Keep advancing. Every word was obeyed, and every word brought ruin to the Empire. alien ships exploded in waves, fire spreading across the battlefield. The Armada, once proud and flawless, now looked broken and scattered. Their perfect wall of steel had turned into chaos. The Dreadnought moved like fire, cutting through dry wood. From distant colonies, from stations listening on hidden channels, others watched the battle unfold. Across the galaxy, whispers began. The humans had done what no one believed possible. They had stood against the Empire, and they were winning. The admirals tried to rally their soldiers. "Hold the line!" they shouted. "Do not retreat!" But their voices carried no power anymore. Fear had already taken root. Every alien commander who looked at the Dreadnought saw not just a ship, but something greater. They saw the shadow of a future where humanity was no longer weak. A future where the balance of the galaxy shifted forever. The Dreadnought's weapons fired again. Another battleship erupted, fragments scattering like ashes across the void. On the bridge of the human vessel, the captain watched silently. His crew worked with machine-like focus, their hands steady, their faces calm. They were not surprised by their ship's power. They had always known this was what it had been built for. One officer whispered, "They are breaking, Captain." The captain's eyes stayed fixed on the view before him. "The wreckage, the fire, the fear." "Then let them break," he replied. The Dreadnought's cannons glowed again, preparing for another strike. Alien ships scattered desperately, trying to flee, trying to reform, but it no longer mattered. The first strike had already changed everything. The galaxy had seen it. The Empire had felt it. The day humanity's Dreadnought entered the battlefield, the balance of power began to fall, and in the silence between explosions, the stars seemed to whisper the same truth. The galaxy would never be the same again. The battle was no longer a battle. It was a nightmare that refused to end. Where once the Galactic Armada stretched in flawless lines of silver, now there was only wreckage. Ships drifted aimlessly, some burning, some broken, their crews screaming over shattered comms. The void of space was littered with twisted metal, glowing sparks, and the fading cries of thousands who once believed they were untouchable. And still, the Dreadnought moved forward. It did not rush. It did not stumble. It glided with calm purpose, tearing through anything in its path. Each weapon fired like a hammer falling from the sky, each strike sending shockwaves of fear deeper into the hearts of the enemy. On the alien flagship, the admirals no longer spoke with pride. Their words were frantic now, their once calm orders drowned out by the screams of officers who had lost faith. Maps showed their formations collapsing, their fleet crumbling in every direction. One admiral whispered to another, his voice trembling, "This cannot be real. No species builds such power, not them, not humans." But the truth was, before their eyes, the Dreadnought was not just a weapon. It was a message written in fire, and that message was spreading from the rim of the Empire to the farthest colonies of neutral worlds. Signals of the battle were transmitted and replayed. On shadowed planets, smugglers listened in stunned silence. On trading hubs, merchants froze at their screens. Soldiers in forgotten outposts whispered to each other in fear. Everywhere, the same question grew louder. If this is what one human ship can do, what happens when they build more? The galaxy had watched the Empire dominate for centuries. No race dared to rise against them. But now, before their very eyes, the unstoppable had been stopped. The invincible had been broken. And it was humans, the species no one respected, that had done it. Back on Earth, the news had not yet reached every home. But in the colonies closer to the front, whispers spread like wildfire. Families gathered around old screens, their faces pale but burning with pride. For the first time in generations, they did not feel small. They felt seen. And far beyond Earth, among alien races who had once enslaved or mocked humans, unease grew like a shadow. They had called humans stubborn, reckless, and weak. But maybe that weakness had only been a mask. Maybe beneath their fragile skin, there had always been something else waiting to rise. On the battlefield, the Dreadnought unleashed another strike. Entire sections of the alien fleet vanished, swallowed by white-blue fire. Those who survived scattered, their formations broken beyond repair. Some commanders abandoned orders and turned their ships to flee, hoping to escape the storm. Cowards! An alien admiral shouted over comms. But his voice cracked, and even he could not hide the trembling in his hands. He knew what his soldiers knew. This was no longer about honor or orders, or even the Empire. This was about survival. The Dreadnought's captain stood tall at the center of his bridge. His voice remained calm, his eyes sharp. Around him, his crew worked without hesitation, each one carrying the same quiet determination. They did not cheer when ships fell. They did not celebrate. They only continued. "This is not about victory," the captain murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. "This is about memory. They will remember." And he was right. Even those who had not seen the Dreadnought with their own eyes would remember it. They would remember the stories told by survivors, the reports spread by frightened voices, the images of alien fleets burning while a single human vessel moved untouched. The terror was no longer contained to this battle. It spread outward, like cracks running through glass, reaching every corner of the galaxy. The Empire had once been feared for its size, its power, its cruelty. But now something greater had entered the galaxy's story, the fear of humanity. On distant worlds, children would whisper of the Dreadnought as if it were a ghost ship, a monster that could appear anywhere. Soldiers would speak of it in hushed tones, afraid to even imagine facing it. Leaders would lie awake at night, wondering if humanity had more of them hidden in the dark. And in the halls of power across countless civilizations, questions began to rise that no one wanted to answer. What if humanity was no longer weak? What if this was only the beginning? On the flagship, one alien commander broke down, shouting, "We cannot stop them! This ship, it is not human, it is death itself." His words spread like fire through the ranks. Some soldiers froze at their posts, unable to act. Others whispered prayers in languages forgotten by the stars. The Empire had always believed fear was their greatest weapon. But now that weapon had been stolen from them. The Dreadnought advanced, its lights burning brighter, its cannons still glowing. It did not need speed. It did not need mercy. It had already won more than the battle. It had won the galaxy's fear. The battlefield was silent at last. No cheers. No victory songs, only silence. A silence that stretched across the wreckage of thousands of ships and the broken pride of the Galactic Empire. Where once a proud armada had stood in formation, now only scattered debris drifted. Hulks of shattered vessels spun slowly in the darkness, their lights fading one by one. The wreckage field was so vast, it looked like a second galaxy of broken stars, glowing faintly as it spread across the void. And in the middle of it all, untouched, unbroken, moved the Dreadnought. Its hull still glowed with blue energy lines, its massive engines burned like fire, and its cannons smoked faintly from their last shots. It did not speed away. It did not need to chase. It simply floated, a titan in the ruins, a symbol of what had just been written into history. On the alien flagship, only fragments of command remained. Half the officers were gone, dead or silent. The admirals who had once laughed at humanity sat in pale shock, unable to speak. Their empire's pride, their greatest weapon, had been shattered before their eyes. This was not war, one whispered, voice hollow. This was judgment. Across the galaxy, the battle's echoes traveled faster than light. Communication relays, spy networks, and trading posts carried the same words from mouth to mouth, screen to screen. A single human ship destroyed the Empire's armada. The story spread like wildfire. Some called it a rumor. Others denied it outright, claiming no ship could do what the Dreadnought had done. But the survivors' eyes told the truth, and the ruins drifting in space were proof enough. Fear grew heavier with every retelling. On neutral worlds, alien leaders gathered in secret, whispering to each other about humanity's rise. Merchants tightened trade routes, uncertain of what the future would bring. Entire planets debated whether to bow to humanity now or prepare for resistance later. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy no longer looked to the Empire as the center of power. It looked to Earth, Inside the Dreadnought, the human crew did not celebrate. They walked the halls in silence, their boots echoing against metal. Their faces were calm, but their eyes carried something darker than pride, something heavier than victory. They had seen what their ship could do. The captain stood on the command bridge, looking out at the wreckage field. His reflection glimmered faintly in the glass, his expression unreadable. He knew what the galaxy would say about this day. They would call it strength. They would call it glory. But in his heart, he understood what it truly meant. This ship was not just a weapon. It was a shadow over the future. "Send word to Earth," he said finally, his voice steady. "Tell them it is done." The officer at his side hesitated. "And what message should we give the galaxy, Captain?" The captain turned, his eyes cold and sharp as blades. "Tell them nothing," he replied. "They already know." The Dreadnought powered down its weapons, its cannons folding back into silence. But the galaxy's silence was not peace. It was fear. Fear that did not end with the battle, but would live on in every whisper, every shadow, every plan drawn in secret councils on distant colonies. Children would speak the name Dreadnought as if it were a ghost story. Soldiers would remember the screams of the Empire's fleet as they were torn apart. Admirals across the stars would redraw their strategies, each one silently calculating how long it would be before humans built another. The Dreadnought had done more than destroy ships. It had destroyed illusions, the Empire's illusion of invincibility, the galaxy's illusion of human weakness. Now every world understood the same truth. Humanity had never been prey. They had only been patient, and patience, when sharpened by survival, was the sharpest weapon of all. The Dreadnought turned slowly, leaving the wreckage field behind. Its engines flared brighter, and with calm, unstoppable motion, it disappeared into the distance, vanishing into the dark like a myth returning to sleep. But its legacy did not vanish. The Empire would rebuild, yes. Its fleets would return. But every soldier who had faced the Dreadnought would remember. Every leader who had once dismissed humanity would think twice before underestimating them again. And every alien child born in the years to come would grow up in a galaxy where one truth lingered above all. The galaxy had always feared the Empire. Now it feared humanity.